I think we need to start off the show with this. I'm sure every other show is doing the same thing, but it's a noteworthy topic. It was a scary thing. For those of you who don't know, or if you do know, I mean, Damar Hamlin, we've all heard, made a tackle on T. Higgins. Looked like a routine play, didn't look anything out of the ordinary. He stood up after the tackle, and then in about a couple of seconds after he stood up, he completely collapsed, looked lifeless. And in fact, he was. We found out that he went into cardiac arrest. The medical people that were there, the first responders, gave him CPR, did an AED on him, revived him, sent him to the hospital. The latest update that I've seen so far is it does look promising. He still is technically in critical condition, so cautiously optimistic, or is what the doctors are really saying right now. But scary thing. Cody, I don't know if you watched the game. I wasn't watching it. I just heard about it on Twitter. My wife actually found it. I wasn't even really into the game because at that point, fantasy football wise or anything like that, I wasn't invested at that point.
Mm-hmm.
First thing that went through my head is I'm glad I hope. Well, first thing what went through my head is, man, I hope he's okay. That's wild,
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was going to be some crazy play, and my wife sent it to me, and it looked like a routine play, man. So
Mm-hmm.
it was very scary. I'm glad I wasn't watching it, especially with my kids. That would be a hard conversation to discuss. That this game is dangerous. I mean, it can be. This is one of those things that is a fluke thing. It doesn't happen hardly ever. You rarely see that, but when it does make you think a little bit. And it brought up a couple of questions from me, and I think we'll get into that in a second. But Cody, I mean, what was your first initial thoughts on it?
So on Monday, when it was being broadcasted, I actually was just watching it on my I have two monitors in my workstation. So I was watching the game on one monitor, and I was working on some stuff for the show on my actual laptop, and I didn't think much of it. And just to your point, it wasn't like it was a crazy scary play or anything like that. It was a basic routine tackle where I got to be honest, I wasn't even paying attention to the play when it happened. And to be truthful, I don't even know what the play was that might have even caused the injury that we didn't know about at the time. And so I opened up Twitter to see, obviously what was happening. And then I still had the game playing on in the background. And then it got to the point where I think it was Joe Buck had mentioned that it looks like the medical personnel now is performing CPR. And when he said that, it was like, whoa. Like, I think hearing that they were performing something that is kind of supposed to be taught in emergency situations being performed at that moment for an emergency purpose. And, I've seen injuries where players have gotten their legs snapped, ankle broken, whatnot. And some of their teammates or other players just look away because maybe they just, can't handle the gruesome scene, which there's nothing wrong with that. Just, how people react to it. But, when they were administering the CPR, then they defibbed him to kind of revive him. That was when everyone's emotion changed and when it seemed more real. So when I went back onto Twitter to see what was going on, they did finally, I saw, I think, where the play was, and you're 100% right, Drew. It was just a routine. I mean, I think Bart Scott was a little outrageous when he claimed that T. Higgins led with his helmet and it was his fault that it caused it. And it wasn't. It was just, Hamlin made a routine tackle, and it didn't seem like much, but it caused a lot of problems. And I think what is echoing now throughout the NFL is a routine play is literally could be, I don't want to make it sound extreme, life or death, but you never know. Certain plays like that could easily, do something. We've seen players on kickoffs get injured or paralyzed, or Ryan Scherzer is the most notable one that comes to mind, where I think it was on, I can't remember if it was a defensive player or a kickoff, where he had a bruised spinal cord and essentially was paralyzed temporarily. And he's still working his way back to walk normally, and it's been a long road, and he had to retire, I think, a couple of seasons ago officially. But, that was on a freak play. This was just a routine play. And I think, what makes it tough is it's always been in the back of everyone's mind that it could happen. And then this just, and it couldn't have happened. I don't want to say it's not a great time to ever happen, but it's a crazy time for it to happen on national television, ESPN, for millions upon millions to watch. It's not like it was on a local Bills or Bengals network that it played on. This was on ESPN, streaming on, their website. If you got cable that gets ESPN, you're watching it. Like, millions upon millions are watching this primetime game, which, to be honest, I was invested in it just because, like, there was a lot of playoff implications, and, it was a great game I was assuming that we could watch to talk about on the show. And then that happens, and rightfully so. This should be at the forefront, because I know this is one of the questions you'll pose, but it'll lead to a lot of questions of what's, going to happen in the future, and stuff like that. But, thoughts and prayers to Damar Hamlin. Hopefully he, comes to quickly. I know that doctors are monitoring him. The NFL has been really good about keeping up with the family. I've seen a lot of NFL personnel or players have reached out. I believe he had a GoFundMe like toy drive that has soared up to like 5 million in donations, which is great.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that maybe a little small positive light in this. And then also too, just hearing that he's in critical condition still, but he's improving, little by little, which is good. That's a positive sign. And, we'll see what happens in the future, but just continuously thinking about him, his family, and, hopefully when he comes to and wakes up and is able to go home, that'll be a day that we can celebrate. But it's definitely a scary thing for something that didn't seem scary at the moment. So definitely makes you put things in perspective on what's important and what's not important. And it was definitely an interesting sight to see on Monday.
Yeah. And you said thoughts and prayers, and I know a lot of people are now starting to get to the point of, well, prayers, what can that do? Actually do something. I'm not a big time religious person by any means, but I have seen, I grew up in the church. My dad was a pastor, so I've been around that stuff. I've seen prayers work. I've seen the power that it can be in it. At least, if anything else, it's a uniter for a lot of people. And I think at a time like this, I don't think to say thoughts and prayers is something that's a negative thing. Twitter's a toxic place, so, take this with a grain of salt, because I'm sure it's just a few people on Twitter who are being very loud. But when people say that, I encourage you, if you are listening to this, to not demean it or say, this is stupid, this doesn't make any sense, why would you even say that? Like, prayer does work, in my opinion. And a lot of people in this country fully believe in that. And a lot of the times, the families of the person, that's all they can ask you to do is pray.